Hey guys, I'm the Coaster Keat, and today I'd like to talk about what I did over my winter break, which is namely going to a country where everyone speaks just a tad bit different from the way they do here. And of course, that place is the United Kingdom. Now, the United Kingdom and America, we've had our bouts in the past. One might have called them a Revolutionary War or something, but ultimately we got together for those big World War things, and we're pretty good friends. So, in that way, I was really excited to go ahead and go to the UK, and I have been before, but I couldn't really remember too much except for rain and getting ice cream at some place. So I was super excited to go there this winter break and to finally get all of my memories just kind of refreshed and to recall what that country was like. And so the second that our plane came in, I was immediately reminded. The day that we got in was the day after Christmas, which is called Boxing Day there. If you didn't know, I'm not sure why it's called Boxing Day. If anything, I would think that the day before Christmas would be called Boxing Day because that's when you put everything into boxes. If you're from the UK or you know that sort of thing, go ahead and let me know in the comments below. I love to learn. But yeah, so we went ahead. We arrived on Boxing Day, which is also kind of like Black Friday here in the US, so everything was on sale. But you know what else was on sale? Rain. And lots of rain, because that day that we flew in, it was pouring. And it wasn't pouring, here's the thing, it wasn't pouring the second that we flew in. It was actually kind of clear for a few seconds. It seemed like this was going to be a beautiful place to spend a few weeks and to, just have a good old winter vacation. But then me and my dad are like, oh, all right, the weather's pretty good. We're going to go ahead and go on a walk around this big park, and it's going to be great. And of course, the second that we step outside of the train system, the subway system, it starts raining. And it starts out not that bad, and we're like, we could go back or change plans, but it's not that bad. It'll let up. It'll be fine. And so we continued on, and the rain just kept getting harder and harder, and it was like, oh, well, we really made a bad call there. And so we ended up walking around this entire big park to try and go to these museums, because of course London has some beautiful museums, but when we get there, they're all closed because it's Boxing Day. And so we end up going around for a while, and eventually we managed to kill enough time to go to the shows that we had planned for the trip. And so that night there were two shows that we had planned, and one was called Curtains, which was written by one of a musical writing duo, the other who has unfortunately passed away over time, and it was essentially this musical comedy about trying to run a musical, one of those things where they're self-referencing a lot. They really love doing that in musicals, by the way. So many musicals like to talk about how weird and stupid it is to make a musical. It's just, I don't know, it's a funny topic, but we went ahead and we saw that, and it was pretty good. It was, but it wasn't fantastic. It was just pretty good. I enjoyed myself. I liked the characters, but, honestly, I can't remember any of their names, and I can't remember any of the songs, so that tells you something. But you know what I did remember? The show that came after it. So after we walk out of Curtains, we had this show, and my dad had told me that we were going to be standing in this show, and I can tell you that after walking around in the rain and everything, I was not the happiest person to be getting the knowledge that I'd be standing for a 2.5-hour show. But we walk into the theater, and the first thing is, it is a standing show for us, but the way it works is that we're essentially in the very back of like the first floor of the theater, so to speak. And we have this little thing, the people that are sitting right in front of us, they have this wall behind them that goes pretty far up, and then you're actually able to lean very nicely on that wall without interrupting the people there, and there's this little cushion thing to make it even easier. So that was all lovely and much better than I expected. But what was even better than I expected was the show, and oh my gosh, was it a show. It was absolutely just crazy. It comes from this tradition that they have in the UK, and I am totally blanking on the word. But essentially, what it is they get these fairy tales, all the stories we know and love. In this case, it was called Goldilocks and the Three Bears, that story. If you don't know that story, then, here, I'll tell it for you really quickly. So there was a mama bear and there was a papa bear and there was a young kid, and Goldilocks decided, hey, I'm gonna break into this house for some reason. And so she goes ahead, breaks into the house, sleeps in all their beds, eats all their food, and actually it's reverse order because she ends up in their beds. Goldilocks comes on over and she's like, I'm gonna go sleep in this bed. And then the bears find her and they yell at her, and chaos ensues, and everything ends up working out nicely. And so we ended up going to this showing of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and something's weird because what you see on the marquee is just three people in these cat suits, and then you see the Goldilocks actor, and then you see someone in this just insane costume, just the craziest thing you could ever imagine as a costume. It was there. This costume, I believe, on the marquee was like a ringmaster's costume, but it was just like tricked out with all of these baubles and things, and it was all like super puffy. And the actor portraying this person was a male actor, and so this is kind of one of the vital aspects of this type of show, apparently, is to have the male actor in the bombastic female role as kind of a comedy sort of aspect. But we went ahead and we went in there, and that show was something else. I could tell you about 3 minutes, maybe, if that, were spent on the actual Goldilocks and the Three Bears theme, and all of the rest was focused on this whole idea that there were two circuses, and there was one evil and one good, and the evil circus was manned by the villain who had this, this very pointy black outfit, and he also had a giant gorilla, moving gorilla sort of thing in the background that must have been 30 feet tall, and a moving lion and a man-eating seal in the background, and it was so scary, so frightening. All the children should have hidden their eyes, but instead they booed and they hissed, because you see, this is all part of the charm of this kind of performance, apparently, for these British people. And then then you have the good circus, which is run by Goldilocks and her mother, and her mother is the guy that's dressed up all fancy like, and it was just the most interesting thing I've ever seen. There was ventriloquism, there was magic tricks, there was this motorcycles. It was just trying to explain it will never do it justice, so I'll just go ahead and stop trying. But if ever you're in Britain for whatever reason, and you happen to be there during the winter season, you need to go and see these shows, because, oh my gosh, they are just something of absolute beauty. But anyways, our trip in London ended up, because of that show, being extremely show themed, because London, and some of you may not know this because I didn't know this because I was ignorant, but London is kind of like Broadway. It's a huge place for theater, and so everyone comes there to perform and act, and so it was just really cool to go ahead and be around that entire area and see all these different kinds of shows at all these different kinds of venues. We saw shows for kids. We saw a show in a bar, like in the back of a bar. We saw professional shows. We saw plays. We saw musicals. It was just so many shows, so many shows. It was an amazing time. And just to balance out those shows, we also went to museums. So many museums. And I think we kept track, and they ended up nearly even, shows in museums. And I can't tell you which one won because I'm not sure right now. But we went to a lot of shows, a lot of museums, had a lot of fun in grand old London. But you know the things that weren't great? Well, because you always gotta focus on the negatives, right? We were going all around London doing all of these crazy, fantastic, amazing things. And then New Year's goes ahead and comes around. And New Year's is said to have this great big show for everyone. You know, London is very proud of this fireworks show that they sell thousands and thousands and thousands of tickets for. But we decided that we were going to take a gamble and we were going to try to see the fireworks show without getting a ticket. Because trying to buy those tickets, you need to buy them weeks and weeks and weeks in advance, and it is extremely difficult. So we hadn't done that, and we weren't about to pay the amount that they were charging at the time for the very last tickets. So we ended up going out on our own in search for fireworks. And so we started out in this square, and then we ended up walking and walking and walking, and we walked so far past so many churches, because you know you can use churches as markers in London. And eventually we saw this all of the people were kind of clumping up in this area, and it was a bit bizarre because they hadn't clumped up anywhere else before. But then we go and look, and we see that all of these people are on this ledge that's right on the river that goes across the city, and they were all set up, and everyone was getting set up. And so we went ahead and did a tiny bit of parkour to get over there, by which I mean there was a barrier at a little under eye level or so, and you had to hoist yourself up and get over there. But we got there, and you know, we looked at it and we were like, we can do better. Walked around a bit, decided, no, we can't do better, and ended up back there. But you know, it wasn't the end of the world that when we got there, we didn't have the absolute best seats. Like, we weren't on the ledge or anything, but it wasn't the end of the world because we still saw what everyone else saw. At least everyone in our little viewing area. Our perspective was exactly the same, and it was just probably the most disappointing fireworks show I've ever seen. It was super short. I swear it was less than 10 minutes. All of the fireworks were lame. There weren't that many of them. It was like Disneyland, but I'm pretty sure Disneyland does better. It was just a bit pathetic, especially for an entire country's like grand fireworks display. I gotta say, UK, you really need to up your game. And it was a little disappointing, to be frank. And later we learned that if you were actually sitting in the designated seats, there's this entire show that goes on. So I can't speak to what that's like, but if you ever want to see the fireworks in the UK, if you want to go out to New Year's in the UK, highly recommend buying the tickets in advance, because they're fairly inexpensive if you get them far enough in advance. And then that way you can actually enjoy the show how it's meant to be enjoyed, instead of being one of the ones that's just kind of like, oh look, there's a thing up there. And the other thing that was supremely disappointing was that Big Ben was in scaffolds the entire time. So all of my dreams of flying into London and then seeing Big Ben and being like, oh, it's just like Peter Pan. Yeah, none of that worked out. But you know, you take what you can get. But the true craziness didn't happen in London, because after all, how much craziness can you get from a group of people that barely talks louder than, I don't know, a whisper? But the true craziness came when we went to Northern Ireland, and it was immediate. So we get off our flight to Northern Ireland, and we go into this bus to go into our hotel. And the second that we get on this bus, I go ahead, I get on my phone for about 2 seconds, and this woman with just a very red face and a smile, just comes over and just looks at my dad and just starts talking to him. Just random things. Just starts talking to him. And it's in English, but it's in such a thick accent you can barely understand a word of it. And she's just talking and talking and talking to my dad's like, okay, okay. And I'm over here like, well, this is happening. And at first I'm enjoying my piece because, she's talking to my dad, so I don't have to do anything. But then she mentions dogs. And you see, I have a weakness for animals. And for a second, just common sense was like, you're on your own, buddy, and just flew out the window. And now here I was talking to this woman who I could barely understand about her dogs, her life, her career, her, like, everything about her. She just had so many stories, her friends, her family, her occupation, like, her hobbies. It was like, oh my gosh, she just kept going and going and going. And I could understand maybe 50% when I was, like, focusing really hard, when I was staring into her eyes and trying to read her lips along with what she was saying in order to desperately get a grip on what she was saying. It was so difficult, just sitting there being like, okay, and then she would pause and you would be like, yep, I totally understand, and then she'd keep going, and you just had to hope by her tone, by like her movements, her hand movements, that you could make out something, anything, so that when you were asked for that response, that yes or that no or that sympathy or that happiness, that you could respond correctly, because a single slip up and you would be the social pariah of Northern Ireland for the rest of your days. So I ended up talking to her. I think it was for 30 long minutes that bus was just rolling down the road to our hotel. And oh wow, it was, I gotta say, one of the most interesting introductions to a country I have ever had. And I will also say, Ireland, you have become one of the most hospitable countries on my list. You and Japan are both up there now, because it was just insane. Everyone in Northern Ireland proved to be very kind, very proud, just good people. I don't know. It was really cool. We ended up going to a Titanic museum in Belfast. We ended up going on this nature tour, so we got to see the Giant's Causeway, which is an amazing place to go, by the way. If you want to go, I sincerely encourage it. But the Giant's Causeway, so we get there, you have to bus down to it, or you can walk down, but my feet were dying, so we bus down. And we get there, and essentially it's all of these hexagon-shaped rocks, just all around, and everything is just this weird shape, this weirdly artificial shape for a natural wonder. And I'm looking at this, and right in front of us is where everyone is. It's this giant, like, outreach into the ocean, essentially. It goes ahead and it climbs nicely up like a little staircase, and then it goes out into the ocean where you can just see the water coming and crashing in on it and, drenching the people that get too close. And so I see all this, and my natural climbing instincts just kicked in, because as a child, I could never resist climbing things. It would be like, oh, look, a rock, and I would climb it. It would be like, oh, look, there's a tree and a rock, and then I would put my back against the tree and I'd climb it. So reaching the Giant's Causeway, I see this beautiful staircase, and I'm like, I'm gonna climb it. And the wind is going so fast. You can't hear a word. I must emphasize this. As you start climbing up this rock structure and getting out of the shelter of it, the wind starts picking up, and you can't hear a single word. And you know what? I can't explain it, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna post the video. The video is gonna play right now. so you can see what I was dealing with. But then my dad starts motioning at me to come down, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'll come down. And I go ahead and I carefully make my way back down. And the second that I do, he says, you shouldn't have been up there. You're not allowed to go up there. He just told me that. And I'm like, what? But everyone's up there. And he's like, well, where you were specifically was bad. And I'm like, it doesn't look any worse than anything else. Like, there were nice steps. It seemed perfectly safe to me. But then we go ahead and we walk around to the other side, and what we see is just a sheer cliff. So essentially that video that you just saw was taken a few feet away from a sheer drop that very much could have killed me. And the fact is that if you went a little further, there'd be the nice gradual decline again. But if you were like assuming that there would be rocks on the other side, well, you would be sorely misguided because, yeah, it would not go well. But the point is, I made it out alive. I got a really awesome video, and it was just absolutely stunning. So, in conclusion, my trip over the winter break was just so much fun. From all the shows and all the artistry to just the hospitality and the natural wonders. It blew me away, and it reminded me just how amazing of a world we live in. And, that's my favorite part about travel, is sometimes it's so easy to forget the natural wonders of the world, or how crazy it is that we are so small on this planet, or whatever. But being in Arizona, where you can see all the mountains almost constantly with the beautiful sunsets, going to the UK, where you can see the great buildings that were built hundreds and hundreds of years ago that you just can't see in the United States. Going to Northern Ireland, where you can see all of the beautiful greenery and just all of the wonderful people and all the ancient castles and ancient trees. It's just, there's just all such different places in this world, and it's just crazy. And I sincerely hope that if you're watching this, one day you get to see them as well, because it's truly amazing, the world we live in. Anyways, thank you all so much for listening, and I hope that you all soar high and enjoy your ride of life. Bye!